Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Kyle Hamer, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at A-Site. For those of you who don't know, A-Site is the global leading data platform for the built environment. Today, we're starting off with our first in a series on simplifying construction project management, focused on digital assets. Our speaker will be Alan Drum. In today's session, Alan will cover how to effectively manage digital assets, things like your specs, submittals, drawings, and more. He'll show you how companies around the globe are saving time and delivering projects more efficiently through improved collaboration and visibility. For those of you who don't know Alan, you're in for a treat. He's the Vice President of Solution Engineering at A-Site, and he's no stranger to technology, construction, or the built environment. Alan has been helping organizations like yours get the most out of their technology, and for the last 23 years, he's built a reputation for helping construction, architectural, and owner-operator companies solve their most complex challenges using industry giants like IFS, AccuBuild, Viewpoint, and Maxwell Systems. You're in for a treat today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have questions at any time during the presentation, at the bottom of the screen, there's a button that says Q&A on it. Feel free to click on the button, pull up, and ask your question. We will answer them in the order they were received at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over and hand it off to Alan. Alan, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Kyle, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. We'll get started right away. I just wanted to kind of go through a few things. Again, my name is Alan Drum. What we'll go through in terms of the agenda today in the webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about A-Site for those of you that may not be familiar with our company. We'll do a little introduction, and then I'd like to introduce you to the platform, just kind of generally talk through what is A-Site project workflow. And then we're going to get right into the heart of the webinar today, which is, as Kyle mentioned, is the discussion of the review of the digital asset capabilities within our platform. And we'll start first by going through a little bit of navigation, a little bit of orientation into the platform, and then talk about, obviously, the dashboards. I like to start with the end result first, which is all the data that we'll manage on the platform, being able to give users insight into various assets, documents, whatever the case may be, where they stand in terms of their workflow. And then we'll get right into some specific examples, as Kyle mentioned, whether it be drawings, submittals, specifications, photos, whatever the case may be. And we'll talk a lot about how those are organized on the platform. We'll leave a little bit of time at the end for questions if we've not answered the bulk of those throughout the demonstration. And then, of course, if we're not able to get to all questions, please do submit them. We will follow up after the webinar if we happen to run out of time. So with that, we'll get started and talk a little bit about A-Site. So A-Site is a global leading product headquartered in the UK, in London. We do have regional offices here in New York and Houston, and then across the globe. Our organization has been serving construction and really asset owners, in the built environment for over 22 years. Really, our platform is purpose-built to be able to drive, all of the information related to project management on the platform, and being able to give the users improved collaboration because it is a web-based product, SaaS. We're able to bring all the constituents into the collaboration environment, of course, at our customers' discretion. And then our platform will allow, the storing of certainly what we'll talk about today, which are the digital assets, but then any of the other project data. We'll talk a little bit about our future webinars and some of the other key areas that we'll cover, including, being able to use our forms and our apps designer, which will be our next webinar. And we'll talk a little bit about, even getting more detailed about mobile and workflow and some of the other things that our platform can do, but all purpose-built to drive that collaboration around all phases of project management, starting at pre-construction all the way to asset delivery and turnover. So with that, we are, a lot of folks have not heard of us in North America, relatively new to this market, of course, have served Europe and the UK and globally for many years. You probably recognize some of the logos here in terms of our diverse customer base. that spans all the way from construction management, infrastructure, property development, government and facilities owners. Really, thousands of clients use A-Site every day. We have about 116 countries represented in our client base, about 120,000 users that are accessing the platform at any given time. So we're not a new startup company in the market. We've been doing this and are experts at delivering what I'm going to show you today. So with that, we'll get right into kind of a description about project workflow. We really, if you think about our platform and what we drive, it really is built on a number of common components. And then what we'll focus in on today are what we tend to refer to as the common data environment. It's really the information that's shared amongst the constituents on the project. And again, today we'll focus specifically in certain areas, right? So we'll talk about, engineering, talk about drawings and specifications, things of that nature, talk about document management, the ability to get to the access to the documents in the field, some of the design coordination and the workflow required as we're in those various phases of the project. What you'll notice, I believe, or certainly I'm confident you'll see as we go through, is that we really do have unmatched configurability. If we think about where our product fits within specifically the North American market, we have a number of traditional competitors that are a little bit less configurable. I would say in many cases, a lot less configurable in terms of how to really bring constituents onto the platform and then design workflows that really are all about getting the right information to the right people at the right time for the right action. So you'll see that as we go through. We're going to use a number of tools. As I mentioned, we'll start first with the analytics and the dashboards. We'll talk a little bit about our field components, the app builder, talk about, of course, the digital assets and the archives, be able to talk about how those can be incorporated in the workflow, and then certainly the collaboration. But as we look across these, those are common components to the platform that you'll see repeated as we go forward in some of the other webinars in the future as well. So with that, we'll get right into the demo, which is why everybody's here, right? So let's get right into it. When users are log in to the product, I'm using Chrome, just a standard browser. You can use Internet Explorer, whatever the browser choice is. It is a SaaS-based product. What users are presented with are what we refer to as our dashboard. And you'll notice across the top, there are a number of tabs that we're going to talk through today. These tabs are oriented around what we call solution sets. These solutions or additions allow even refinement in terms of who's using the platform and for what purpose. Of course, today we're here to talk about collaboration. We'll introduce some of the others in the future, but that really kind of configures what the users will see across the top here as we navigate the solution. Every dashboard is created using a number of what we call gadgets, or traditionally maybe called widgets, whatever you want to call them. They are made up from a library that we have pre-built for users to be able to track and identify and provide key performance indicators around certain activities. Certainly in the digital asset realm, we want to understand when new files are published or brought onto the platform. We want to understand, maybe marking some of our favorite folders, being able to look across some of these. We can even provide filters, charting against filters. So if you think about the numerous documents that are going to be stored on the platform, being able to provide access and shortcuts to not only navigate these documents, but then provide users visibility into the tasks that are assigned to them. So you'll notice here in my design coordination folder, I have 5 overdue tasks. If I were to drill down directly from the dashboard into this folder, what you'll notice is now I'm brought into a view that is really a log view, and we're going to spend more time on this in a moment, but I'm brought directly down into that particular folder with all of the documents that are made up for the design coordination. In contrast, I may have specific documents, and typically, that was a pretty short list, but in many cases, we may have hundreds, if not thousands of documents that make up a project lifecycle. And so when we drill down on something that needs action, what you'll notice is across the top, I'm provided with immediate filtered views. And so this is saying, okay, I only want to look at documents in that folder where the task status is incomplete. And we're going to talk a lot more about the tasks and the workflow and how things get to that particular state. but just note that, again, we're trying to put in front of the users, not only the navigation capabilities, but what is it that they're required to do across the assignments that have been made to them through the various workflows. And again, we'll cover other areas in future webinars, but things like our forms and project controls. But if we think about what we're focusing on today, kind of the two-dimensional digital assets, we also do support three-dimensional BIM models, and a lot of what you see today in terms of the collaboration can also be done in the 3D. Again, we'll reserve that for a future webinar. But let's go right to kind of drilling down on some of these particular electronic assets. One thing I do want to note right off the bat is that our platform is purpose-built to manage multiple projects at one time. In a portfolio, if you will. I've actually selected a group of projects that I'm responsible for running. I've noted those as favorites, but I can look at an entire list of projects, make individual selections, whatever the case may be. But probably the key thing to remember about the selection and the portfolio capability within A-Site is that all of the information that I'll see subsequent to that selection is all based on that combination. So all of the document tasks here are based on the selection of that, in that case, somewhere around 6 projects. In contrast, if I were to come up here and say, I really just want to look at one project and go directly to my construction management project and turn off the favorites, what you're going to see is a real-time update of the data on the platform represented to the user that then takes me to, again, my favorite folders, the tasks that are outstanding for that particular project, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll use this for the rest of the demonstration, just so you can kind of see the differences here. We use that particular project. But if I turn it back on, one thing you'll note as we navigate now to the file area is that the electronic assets underneath the files tabs are able to be stored and managed in a number of different configurations. These configurations are done using folders or subfolders that the user specifies and configures. There's no limitation to how these folders can be configured. You're noticing amongst the 6 or 7 projects that I've selected, I have every one of these has an individual and different way of organizing the data. We recognize that our customers have either existing business processes or new business processes that they want to conform to, and that may vary even project by project. A couple of things should be noted about this is that the folder structure does provide for some additional level of security. So we do have the ability to set different permissions for a particular folder, whether we make those public or private, whatever the case may be, in terms of determining when and where users can get access to the different levels of documentation. I should note, if we go back to the project area just for one moment, at the construction, at the project level, there are a number of different settings. And again, we won't get deep into this today, but the ability to provide different user roles and access, be able to assign those role privileges, be able to invite users to the platform are all standard ways that we manage getting the entire, constituent base for a project onto the platform. And again, controlling, what phase of the project they're working on, what data they should be able to see, et cetera. So if we go back to the files, the folder structure is great, but it's also not mandatory. So if I were to turn that off, and let's say, for example, I'm looking across all 7 of those projects right now, let's say that I wanted to look for a document reference or document title that had specific words in it. So you'll notice that all of this data on the platform is indexed. And so if I were to type in sugar, this is a particular document title that I'm looking for, a particular set of plans, you'll notice that it automatically filters across. Then I didn't have to go into one project or out of one project to search for that. I'm searching globally across the selected projects. So again, in contrast, other things that we can do in this log view allow us then to actually navigate down to a folder if we choose. So if I want to go into the drawings area, I can go specifically to that. The right-hand log view, of course, is immediately filtered to that. A couple of things about the data you're seeing. Obviously, we can upload files and documents, electronic assets, whatever the case may be, either one at a time by doing drag and drop. So if I were to come out to a particular folder, let's say, and drag, a single file or multiple files, doesn't matter. I'll just grab a file here from over on the other side. I've got a group of files here. This one happens to be a whole folder, so we can upload a folder at a time. We can upload individual files at a time, whatever the case may be. And when we upload those and we drag and drop, the user is presented with a number of options, again, to fill out that classify the documentation. And again, we utilize what we call attributes, really kind of a fancy word for user-defined fields that allow us to classify the documentation and then provide it as really metadata that can be used throughout our platform. And that's in the log views that we're seeing, we can sort, slice, dice the information. It's available in all of the reporting, and it's available to build out those filters and queries where we can see things on the dashboard based on a certain attribute that's been assigned to a particular file. We also allow for, if we look at some examples that I've already built out here, if we were to right click on this and see the attribute configuration for this particular document, you'll notice that we also have built automatically what we call a document reference. So we're supporting, of course, the original file name. This one happens to be a DWG. We've named it with a specific document title. We've identified a purpose of issue, what's the discipline, and what type of document it is. Those combinations based on the selection have driven an automatic naming convention for what we call the document reference. And again, for many organizations, they may have this methodology already in place. For other organizations, they want to move towards something a little bit more sophisticated that gives them the ability to classify the documents. Certainly for some of our municipal and government type organizations, some of these classifications are in fact mandatory when we work on some of those projects. So again, a lot of flexibility in terms of how we utilize the attributes for naming and managing the electronic assets themselves. And again, I'm doing this based on drawings today in the short time we have, but you'll notice, I've done things like load up MSDSs. I had a client that wanted to make all of the safety data sheets available to their team members out in the field. So these same documents are also available on our mobile app. And we're going to do a separate webinar on this, but just this is a full featured app that's installed on iOS. And again, it can be a phone, it can be a tablet. We also support Android. But when we look at that common data environment, the ability to look at the files, and again, I've got on my tablet the same file structure or projects selected, but as I drill down into each one of these, I'm able to see the same information that I saw on the mobile device, or I'm sorry, in the web browser, including, being able to pull up an actual plan in the field. And again, this can work in an online or an offline mode, but it's going to support the same kind of collaboration capabilities that I'm going to show you here in our next segment. But I just wanted to, again, we'll spend more time in a future session on mobile, but we do recognize that not only managing the workflow, the reviews, the approvals, all the things that we're doing with electronic or digital assets, we need to be able to give the field access to the information, be able to give them the most current version of drawings so that everyone is on the same page. And again, back to that, right information to the right people at the right time for the appropriate actions. Right, those are kind of stuck in my head about what we're really trying to do when we're managing the project, because this information is very dynamic in many cases. And, if we're not all on the same page, right, errors, delays, risks, all the things that every one of you exist within managing these complex projects. So with that, we'll go back to the file viewer. I do want to show it live here in the browser view. We support over 300 different file types in our online viewer. The online viewer is really purpose built for a number of things. One is that users can obviously collaborate. So when files are brought onto the platform, they're moved through and assigned to different users for various actions. You'll notice that mine currently was assigned for information, but it could be for action, could be whatever the case may be based on the workflow and the distribution that's been assigned to me. Ultimately, someone has the responsibility for status. And again, our statuses can include, approvals, can be ball in court based on, submittal reviews. It can be open, it can be rejected. Again, these are configured by our customers' organizations for what statuses make sense based on the document type. What you're seeing already is a number of different annotations. It is capable of doing all types of annotations and markups, from very simple shapes, inserting call outs, being able to do specific measurements, all directly on the actual view. Those annotations are embedded and saved by the user that created them. So for example, this went through originally to review, is sent to me, and along with 13 other recipients. I can always see who else was included on that. But you'll notice that I actually did the markup and I named it AD2. This was my markup here that I sent back on June 16th. So, it's not only the review and the comments and the annotations, but it's iterative. It keeps the full history over the life cycle of the document. And that's for all revisions. So automatic revision control, the ability to set revision requirements for check-in, check-out, whatever the case may be. But we also can look at a prior version at any time. So if I back up and say, okay, I'm on the current revision, I want to look at what the old one was because I want to understand what was changed or what the comments were previously. Notice there were a number of things that were noted by this particular user back earlier or later in the last part of 2021. So again, what I'm able to do there is, did the changes get made per the requirement? And again, I'm looking at a DWG. This is actually a CAD file versus, obviously PDF works the same way. DGN files, things coming from very specific authoring tools, can all be viewed on our platform. But if we go and look at something like the history, I can then see all of the workflow and all of the information as it's been distributed, either manually or automatically through, you're noticing, by specific users or initiated via a workflow. And so as we look at the workflow for this document, when it was uploaded to the system, it was given a specific workflow. And again, this is just a simple example, but the ability then to run it through multiple personnel or roles for different actions can all be configured on the platform. We always know where it's at. Right now it's overdue, it's in red, and we can see it's at this particular status. But we do have actually an authoring tool for our workflow. So when we look at the workflow definitions that can be applied, they're really limitless. And we provide a number of out-of-the-box workflows, like something like a simple design review. If we look at that, we'll come right into the authoring tool called our workflow designer. And you can see this is a very simple linear workflow. In contrast, we might see something a little bit more sophisticated, like maybe a design comment workflow. This one is going to have multiple conditions or gates. And again, these are drag and drop, so our users can author these by pulling on a specific task, defining what needs to be done at what stage of that workflow. Just note that our workflow designer goes from very simple to very comprehensive, including things like supporting, ISO BIM 19650 standards for document review and approval. This is just an example of a more comprehensive, complex workflow, right? We're going through various approvals, we're going through various gates and checks and making sure, right, that it gets to the right place at the right time for the right action. And again, whether approved or not approved, with or without comments, all of those can be supported in a more comprehensive, complex workflow. The last thing I wanted to show you here, as it was going through the various statuses and getting to the right people for those actions, is then the ability to obviously change that, so I could update the status as appropriate. But I could also look, as I was saying, being able to compare to prior versions. So if I wanted to look at the ability to revise and resubmit, I would be able to do that by simply coming on and looking at the various versions here, and then being able to do a specific overlay. So when I overlaid the document, I'm able to see, the changes that have actually been made in this particular document. So again, a lot of things, a lot of depth here. I know we've only got a short amount of time today, but what you'll see here is the ability to then drive the documents to the right place at the right time. All right, so let's go right into, if you will, the last thing that I wanted to do is just say, what we covered today was the navigation, the dashboards, the documents, the digital assets, the workflow, and the collaboration. And again, our goal here is to help drive better visibility for the documentation, be able to give better productivity to your organization, to your staff, and then be able to drive improved collaboration. And so with that, we are purpose-built for delivering change to the way assets are designed, built, and managed. And with that, I'll take any questions. Again, if you've got it in the chat, if not, feel free to send those to North American Sales at asite.com. And we appreciate your time today in the webinar and look forward to having an opportunity to show you more functionality on the platform in our next webinar, where we'll really be talking about more of the project controls. So RFIs, submittals, daily field reports, all those types of things can be done on the platform as well. And so please register for that. That's going to be October 19th at 2 p.m. And again, appreciate your time today. And with that, I'll pause. Kyle and team, any questions out there from anyone in the webinar?
Hey, Alan, thanks for that. That was great. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. And
Sure.
as a reminder to our panelists, or not panelists, our attendees, if you do have a question, they're at the bottom of the ribbon here on the Zoom. There is a button that says Q&A. Go ahead and click on that and submit your question. The first question we have, Alan, you talked briefly, and I think you glanced over, but you did talk about the diversification of different file types and being authoring tool agnostic. How many different file types does ASITE support?
Yeah, it's at last count, it was well over 300 different file types. And again, our viewer can represent those for what I showed, which is being able to do annotation and viewing it. We also have plugins and direct interfaces with things like Revit and other authoring tools, CAD, right? So that if I'm the person that needs to go back to the source platform to do any of the authoring work, I can do that as well. So again, our platform's designed to support and view and collaborate against all of those document types. Great.
Now, quick follow-up on that particular question. Some of those files can be gigantic, and if I'm trying to solve it today with a competitive solution, it might be something like a Dropbox or a Procore and things that may have storage limitation or file size limitations. Does ASITE have any limitations around the data as far as information storage or even file sizes? Is that, do you have information on that?
Yeah, no, we really don't. We've built the product, obviously, as you saw, for large organizations managing very large projects with lots of documentation, and certainly trying to get the right size or one size, being able to do that individually by controlling that would be difficult. So our licensing model is based on unlimited users and unlimited data. We do have times where customers want something maybe a little bit different than that, but that's our core platform offering. We want everyone to participate in the collaboration. We want to be able to store all the documentation for all of your projects in an unlimited fashion.
Great. So in typical environments like these, where I'm dealing with a lot of different documents, and you talked about the threading of comments and updates and some of the audit trail pieces, do I get notified when changes and things have happened? How does that notification happen to me when either a new document is uploaded or somebody has commented? Yeah, great question. I should have shown that a little bit better, but one of the things you'll get is alerts up here in the top right-hand side, so notifications on the platform. We certainly are going to also see, as I'm within that particular file area, the other thing that you'll see is underneath that particular document, right? We see the status, but you're also seeing the tasks that are showing the action that's required. And so that action is not only in the log view, but then that's represented again back on any of these indicators, here or underneath the document task. And then we also do things like push notifications to the mobile device. So users that are in the field are going to get a push notification that says, hey, you've got a document out here that needs your attention, or a new version or revision's been uploaded. The other way that we do it is a traditional instant email too. So users can configure their profile so if they want to be emailed, they'll get a notification of that as well. And things like that
look something similar to this, where I get an email that says, hey, here's the document, here's the title of the document, this is the status, and this was sent to you for comment. And you'll notice the hyperlinks here. These are designed to take you directly to that document through the hyperlink or whomever the user it was sent to, and then be able to get directly to the action that was required by that particular user. Great question.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So in addition to this, when we're talking about the files and the sharing, oftentimes that can be handled in email or Dropbox. Is it possible to invite people from outside of my organization to participate and collaborate with me? Can I bring in our architects or suppliers, our subcontractors? Is that something where I can bring them into this instance that I would have?
Absolutely, and actually desired, right? We really want our customers to be able to utilize that for, again, we use this term common data environment, but we want to be the hub, right, of all the data that's being shared and stored within a project life cycle. And so when we go back to that kind of project setup, as we were talking about earlier, those roles and access are unlimited. So you really get to decide who it is that you're bringing and assigning within a particular role on a project. So architects, engineers, design folks, consultants, whatever the case may be, if they're important to your project and they need to be able to see and access documentation, absolutely we want them to be a user. Now, that's not to say that all users want to come on the platform, because you may want to invite them. So we do offer other methods like that email notification. We'll offer the ability for users to get information or provide information without even logging onto the platform. Things like a common, mailbox where I can send a file, or I can do, send information in and automatically logs it into the files area or the digital asset area. And then it would kick off a notification to whomever's responsible for receiving that information. So absolutely.
Fantastic. Now, what we've looked at today is predominantly the web version of the application, and you touched a few times on mobile device and different pieces. When I look at the mobile capabilities, are there elements beyond just the viewing and interacting with the digital files, whether it's a Word document, a contract, a drawing? Are there capabilities beyond that would allow me to get more utility of the mobile version of A-Site?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it supports all those different file types, but as we go into even some of the future webinars, things like the project forms, right? And this is kind of talking about our next section, but when we talk about project controls, being able to get into things like RFIs, change order requests, meeting minutes, a lot of these different forms, not only the drawings, accessing drawings in the field and collaborating or doing markup, but they're usually associated with some action, right? So I've got a question, one of my subcontractors has a question in the field. They can raise an RFI, tie it to the plan, send it to somebody with a question, and then be able to get it resolved and move through get the right information, the right people, the right time for the right action. And so RFI is a great example. I think about inspections, daily field reports, right? We're going to be collecting information from the field, and some of that information is a digital asset. So that interaction is a key part of what we'll be talking about next time. And again, all of that is supported on the mobile platform.
Outstanding. All right. Well, Alan, I really, really appreciate you taking time going through the high level of managing digital assets today. For everyone who's attended, we appreciate you being here. Right immediately following after the session, we will have a brief survey for you to share with us your thoughts, feedback. We would really welcome any insights that you would have, things that you would like to see in the future sessions. Please do remember that Simplifying Construction Project Management, we are having another webinar on October 19th at 2 p.m. with the focus on project controls. If you have any questions, Alan just had it up. Please do send an email to nasales@asite.com. We'd love to see you next week, and we thank you for coming today.